Hello and welcome, I'm Tafra Kadamu. Addis Ababa and a lot more locations across the country are about to be interesting tourist attractions as we jump into new ruins previously left unnoticed. What are we really talking about? My guest today, Dr. Marcon Vigano, along with other Ethiopians and European scholars, is one of the people at the heart of this adventure. A very warm welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tafari.
You are involved in the dissemination of information regarding primarily ruins all over the places in this country. I mean, in and around Addis Ababa and also as far as Hararge and all those locations.
Well, I would say first the Hararge, that's almost 20 years ago. And I have a friend, a close friend, a mentor in many ways, called Ahmed Zakaria. Many know him. And we organized a conference, must have been 17 years ago, on these ruins we were finding around Harar and trying to understand who are the Hararis. And one of our main focus since that early day was Arla. Now Arla has been excavated by Professor Tim Sol and his team. By the way, he's a
team of archaeologists that have done that everywhere.
And by the way, the teams always have linguists, geomorphologists, I could tell you.
It's, in most cases, multidisciplinary, and as it should be.
In that sort of team, me, a doctor of Gabriel Nalimat, I can say it.
Agriculture remotely related to what you... Yeah.
With experience in remote sensing since the first satellites. I'm a technician, as Fatovich called me, a technician for archaeologists, or he called us. So what we do is what we call first phase studies. I beg my pardon for this jugurgur. My home language is not English. I'm Italian. I speak about 7 languages. My language now is Amharic, so I do apologize. We do recognition from the satellites, and I think I introduced this technology to Ethiopia. The Americans call us sat archaeologists. Don't really like that because it sounds very strange. How can you do archaeology with a satellite? The technical term is remote sensing for heritage management.
But remote sensing has been there as used by geologists. You know, they have done that.
Definitely, even to find water. So it's brilliant. It's very important.
So they have been doing that. They have been doing that.
Ethiopia has a satellite. So we know these sort of things. And since 2008, 2009, we have a tool called Google Earth Pro, and it's amazing because before we had to pay. Could I manage in Ethiopia $70 for a photo? Maybe not to the right area. Now you can change with the clock, the time, go back. Example, Yeka Tarara. You don't find anything. It's all eucalyptus. They cut the eucalyptus in 2004, 2011. I could tell you the years. And then under it you find forts. So what is Yeka? An imperial site. Because we have not only Washa Mikael. Imagine 19.2 meters facade with 7 naves. Do you need a cathedral in the bush? No, we found 5 villages, with the last ones. Towards, in fact, 6 with the ones found by my friend Kerubel. Because now the finds are mostly made by Ethiopians.
You mean the same people who are involved in excavations in Hararge? No.
No, they are not. Because when we found those ruins in Hararge, or we find nothing. We rediscover what people know was there or what people ignored and the satellite revealed to us. I've got a friend. He's in fact a technology expert in a server in Toronto, but he's from Gursum and he's an Harari. And so once he read that I publicized this Gursum Kondudo feral horses and I found ruins and caves around, he started doing the same thing. And he moved an association. He sent me money to do more research on Kondudo. So in the end, we started realizing there were capital cities around this mountain. One was called Ubat, and it corresponds, we believe, with Arla. And so the Harari state started calling with Hararge, Oromia, these scholars. And they did the whole research. But this is 15 years after we've been studying these places. And recently we are studying Dakar, which is the former Harari capital. The Harla are a bit separate, then they merge. So Ubat we can call the 10th, 11th century for 300 years capital of the Harlas, but the Harlas and the Hararis are more or less the same. But Dakar, probably near Chinaksan, that's the last week's discovery.
Same neighborhood, yes.
Yes, beyond Mount Kondudo, the other side of Mount Kondudo, because Dakar is associated with this magic mountain of the feral horses, believe me. They call it Shedda Wameda. It is, by any standard, a very beautiful mountain. And in its Atintoch, in its entrails, we found one of the best caves in Africa, called two different names, but very beautiful. The most common name is now Olca Oromo. And you go inside for kilometers, and it's very small and beautiful speleological cave. You can't foster tourism. But what we do as action researcher is finding ways to foster tourism. And finding capitals around Mount Kundudo means you can use it for tourism, not just for Kirsen.
Okay, we'll talk about that part. So basically you are here and there, right, with a group of people who are interested in doing the same, right?
Exactly. So the group is called Mizrak Kirs. It was an official NGO in Ethiopia, but we met some difficulties because in the time after those elections, some people say they turned bad about 16 years ago. What happened? We were considered a project and not an NGO. So the project we chose was reforesting Mount Akim. 15 years ago, it was sort of advanced. Now the government does it every time with a special commission. We didn't manage because we were Araris and Italians, people of Arar here, and we never managed to really follow it up. So they just, in a way, say, no, you have to start again. You have to change your name. I say, no, this is my name. And we have a group with a lot of followers called Mizrak Kirs on Facebook. And I see that now people in that group, by the way, a lot of top scholars, Ethiopians and non, and simple people. And sometimes the simple people like me.
Exactly. So you don't necessarily focus on the eastern part of this country, right? You're interested in all.
Right. You know what happened? In those caves, I found a very bad illness in a way nearly killed me, called histoplasmosis. And my wife said, Marco, no more caves. And as I'd found ruins, as I mentioned, I started looking for ruins all over. And
with this group, you're not only covering eastern Ethiopia, are you? You're also doing the central one, right?
You're right. We soon moved our focus to Central Shoa because of a map that was entirely designed for a third of its Africa parts, the Framauro map, very famous, finished around 1450, but designed by Ethiopian scholars from the area of Zukwala, Barara, call it whatever you like, Central Shoa, in Venice in March 1440. This guy went there and they proved that we didn't invent topography in Ethiopia with the fascists or after that, or with the French. They designed a very precise map of their area, and as Africa was terra incognita, nobody knew, Central Shoa became bigger than Congo. And if you see that map, it's very emotional to me, because the map is about 2 meters, and the area in Central Shoa could be half a meter across. It's not small, it's big. And so maybe 30 centimeters. But in that little part of the map, which I visited personally, the scholars greeted me, and Marco, we know your research. Really, this is the map of Africa. It was the first time ever Africa was put on a map. By whom? By Abyssinian monks. And so we used that map, and we saw that a focus of something was definitely around Mount Wechacha, Mount
Definitely that requires a lot more research than we currently have on that particular subject, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's another issue for another time. But how many ruins are you talking about in and around Addis Ababa? Because that's a walking distance.
I have to be precise because this is not my domain, it's the domain of ARCCH.
Right.
There's an authority for research and conservation of these ruins.
Basically issues a license for scientific expeditions and all that stuff. No, that's set aside. But
only phase 1. I can't move a millimeter, and I don't. What we do is site walking and site finding via satellites. But the job is being done, especially, I must mention them, by Zerabruk Samare and Kerubel and Seife Gabriel. Seife Gabriel is even as a drone. So we do these things as a group. We will go out as walkers on a Sunday.
So you walk for fun and then?
Yes, but this has been going on in Addis, at least from my side, for at least 8 years. So I can tell you that there's about 13 forts all around Addis Ababa. Most of the ruins are within Addis Ababa. The big ones are on Reppi, and they're all pentagonal size, like shape, like if the emperors like this shape. And definitely we've got a lot of indication that people were living in peace, and they were from a lot of ethnicity. Because if you say this is a powerhouse with maybe 200,000 people or more living around Addis in that area, in that date, which is from David the First, they will call it the second, whatever, 1380 until the Battle of Shimrakure and the destruction of all these sites by Eke Barara, whatever you call them, Sadai, in 1530, which is very historical because that's a period where the historians wrote a lot. And if you follow the Fut al-Habesha, which doesn't mean the destruction of Abyssinia. And it was never written by many Arab scholars. It was written by an Harari, and the Harari friends know that sort of Arabic, and it was written as an hagiography of Imam Ahmed Ibrahim, we call him the left-handed, who actually destroyed a lot, but also appreciating and never touch La Libera. And these guys describe exactly what they're visiting. So another scholar from Rutgers University just published a very successful book. You can't find it anymore, and I think he printed 15,000. You can't find a copy left, stating that there was a capital around here. We can't state anything because it's all overbuilt, but I can tell you there's forts all over, and these forts should be turned to, you were asking me, economic use, tourism.
How fragile are those structures?
Some of them are very, very strong. But we could probably realize, can I say that? Some people see a rivalry between us and our Nilotic brothers, the Egyptians, which, by the way, in the time of the pharaohs had more your color than an Arab color or my color. But that's up for debate. These guys have some power, but their economic power is basically the Egyptian based on more than 30 million tourists. Do we have a tenth of 100 of that? I'm sorry, not yet. They've invested greatly in archaeology. So my cry to the Ethiopian government is fund the SCCH. The SCCH should not be waiting for my 5 PhD doctors, mainly from Italy, who are going to submit a project for this central show. They haven't done it yet because of COVID-19, but they have a PI, I have a principal investigator, a note archaeologist from Bologna University, who is going to do all the thing. But he wants me first to finish your question. How many sites do we have around? More than 360 in and around Addis. He wants me to finish a sort of huge database, which I'm slow at doing because it needs site visiting, but I can help him, and he should come. He should have come already. He will come soon.
But you're not a trained archaeologist, and how can people take you seriously?
Well said. In fact, I'll tell you, I've been saying that there's lots of ruins within Addis and in Ararge, if that matters, for 18 years in Ararge and 10 years around here. The first 5 years, I said to myself, and some German scholars, which I think are the best now, the Ethiopisans, if you find their names, sustaining one side or the other recently, but never mind, they are Germans. In fact, I even tried to learn German because of them. And they told me, Marco, if you mention you're finding all these ruins in Addis, they will take you for a little bit of a bonkers guy. So I waited for 5 years. I went to Mekelle at one big meeting, which was about architecture and art and not exactly the EIS, the big meeting. I had half a standing ovation, and big scholars, don't mention them, wanted me to take their place seated because they said, Marco, what you're doing is amazing. I don't know, but I know who I am. I'm a technician, calling the others, calling the archaeologists. If these researchers, Italian mainly, they're my team, but they come from universities all over the world. Ethiopia is a middle-income country since a month. Italy is falling back to being the same, maybe not the same tire, but in the same category of Ethiopia. So maybe they cannot house all the scholars. They don't have all the fund to excavate all over the world. It's not just excavating. They want to submit a project and study here. In the last 5 years, after that outstanding ovation in Mekelle, I thought maybe I'm in business. But then, I'll be frank with you, there were other drawbacks. Some scholars from one ethnicity accused me of defending one ethnicity. I say, well, I'm with Baru Zewde. I think your present diatriba should not go into history because history is bigger than us all. So we think that I actually teach valuation recently at the Italian school and college. And valuation means I put value to things. Can I put values to ruins?
Right. Well, but sure. But it always boils down to this: when the RCCH approves research proposals, they make sure that the people who are handling all these projects are really trained professionals in any given field: archaeology, history, and also PhD. So how can you be taken seriously as far as this is concerned? It's a very cardinal rule, if you will.
Quite right. I'm not being taken seriously as an archaeologist, but I've been taken seriously globally as a technician for archaeology. But I happened to jump up from the last man to the second most clicked scholar in Academia Edu after a friend, who is, by the way, the director of a huge center of Ethiopian studies, the biggest in the world, so he has to be the most clicked Ethiopian ever, Professor Alessandro Bausi. Why this happened? Because a lot of attention was drawn to the seriousness of my argumentation. And by the way, it's probably thanks to Ahmed Zakaria, Meftu Shasha Bukhari, and me that we have done all these discoveries in Arla. So how can we be so much behind the Hararis? We will do the research. And Professor Marco Cavalazzi of Bologna University hasn't come because of COVID, but he's ready. He's waiting for my database to submit the proper research. And he has PhD in archaeology. There's 2 PhD in archaeology. There's the geomorphologists. We need them. I'm a PhD in agriculture, so they wouldn't consider me.
Interesting, but you're not published in peer-reviewed journals, are you?
Exactly. By the way, we had a discussion about this with the head of research, forgotten his name, a few years ago, now quite a few years ago, in ACCH. Because I go there fairly regularly, got friends there. One of the Addis Ababa monuments is, by the way, already registered as a national monument, the so-called Pentagon Citadel up in Entoto. So, in a way, it has been recognized by local, not by me. And by the way, it was founded by Milik, not by me. So that's another sector. But I can tell you that, sorry, the question was, how can I...
Yeah, I mean, in order to be taken seriously, you need to go through this peer-reviewed processes and have...
At that time, I've forgotten the name.
In journals. So you're not doing that, are you?
No, I'm not. By the way, I cannot. Until ACCH gives the permission to the proper scholars, this cannot be published. Because it's, in many ways, Ethiopian properties. And you need to do the proper research with the whole team, and the whole team is coming. So I believe ACCH will consider their application, not me, because the PI is professional archaeologist, and they will probably give space to this. You know why? Because me, the technician, and the action research man cry for it, because sites have been destroyed in the meanwhile.
So at the end of the at the end of the day, I mean, you said economic benefit out of all this, and that's a very important point. You're talking about tourism and what this country could get exactly. So,
I can give you a price tag, $300 million. How on earth do we calculate that? It's a lot of million or billion birr. How do you do that? In valuation, the value of new sites or any site is done by showing photos to the people, asking how many days would you spend here, because that day is critical. If we have the Wachacha Yemen Nagesha Suba Yezauden, the first national park in the world, I could discuss you maybe in another interview, how can this easily be by 150 years filled with ruins?
And it's just outside of Addis.
Yes, that was decreed by Zera Yaqub. And if you see the news we have about it, it's not very technical, but it has all the criteria of a national park. So the first national park in the world, filled with ruins, with the Entoto National Park, which is not just a small thing for tourists, but is the whole mountain, including Yeka, for example, probably the Badeke site, we're just studying it. So if the tourists stay 1 or 2 more nights, they spend $150 minimum. I calculated very easy. Then I took this $27 million divided by 9%, which I think is good for cultural investment. It's very stable stuff. I could divide it by a smaller number. It comes up to about $300 million. So if we let, I don't know, just because they don't know, Elpa completely cut through a village in the Yeka Valley. Happened. And don't mention the scholar, but an Ethiopian scholar friend of mine said, wow, if they'd moved 2 poles, 15 meters, they wouldn't have bulldozed this. Never mind. And by the way, archaeologists don't like the forts on the mountains because they've not been lived in. They're massive. They're massive. I can show you 4 meters tall towers. They like the villages and the valleys because they're where you find the culture if you excavate. Never mind, we have more of those. But if we don't care about these ruins, which, by the way, are known by SSH by now, they will follow me in a way, indirectly, I think they will not be displeased by this professional PhD, which also bring a little bit of money for the research, because I think it's needed research.
Are tour operators looking into this possibility of doing business around Addis by attracting visitors?
Yes.
Have they taken note of the sites?
Describe you my day this morning in Addis Ababa University. I like sitting in a dir. I wait for my friend Ahmed Zakari. He didn't come today because somebody's interviewing him today. He's such a big man. And I had a couple of tour operators. One had the problem coming in. I don't know, forgot his ID. So I went out in they call it Karl Marx Park. It's called something Denby Park. I went there and met him, and he had all a plan about finding ruins in Bali. I haven't found any ruins in Bali yet. And discussing another idea of making a popular observatory up to Ludim to one of the best spots in the world for seeing stars. And he likes seeing birds. He was thinking his business. One of our key guys, maybe I mentioned before, I don't need to mention again, even has a drone and is helping us doing just photos, not even what you call aerophotogrammetry or rebuilding the sites in 3D, which we could do very easily. I can do personally. And that I leave to RCCH and after the permission. So there's tour operator with a lot of interest. So much interest because, let's talk frankly, some of them are closing down. Within 6 months, they'll be closed down, and tourism is not coming yet. They are all begging for local tourism. And with all this, sorry, can I say the word kurat, that these new initiatives they're bringing into Harare and even here, I think we could organize a play. Oh, the other guy who stopped me, and I was late to see you today, is Zerion, the head of the theater section. He thinks we could organize a play on medieval, he doesn't have a frame, and it's already online, remembering those wars. which called modern ethnicity religion, and how the women were leading that. And he has a beautiful idea, the re-giving back of Liege Mohammed of the Adal Sultanate in exchange from future emperors Minas, because Bati del Bonbara and Seber ran the whole thing, and he wants to make a play on that. So it happens that now my life these days, especially with the new government, is rolling around initiative of people who want to turn these ruins into tourism.
Well, good luck with that, and thank you very much indeed, Dr. Marcon Vigano.
Thank you, Teferi, for your interest. It's so welcome.